Okay, I'm here to discuss my workout packet for my rising junior, left back Elisa Muir. As we get into the athlete profile section, you can see that Elisa, it was a transfer for us this past year. So she played 1 year of Division 1 before transferring to Division 2. In both years, she received conference honors. As we look forward to her junior and senior year, her goals are to become an All-American, and her short-term goals are to increase the power of her strikes, the height of her vertical jump, and the distance on her throw-ins. You can see some of her just general physiological measurements down here, and then obviously some of her test results from the past 12 months. As we get into the needs analysis, Elisa plays left back, but she has a terrific endurance base and is very, very eager to get into the attack. So I think that while Elisa has, certainly a need and a great desire to improve her phosphagen system, she's very quick and explosive to begin with. But the majority of her work, I think, as we look into the conditioning section of this program, will be in the glycolytic area. She typically gets forward, I would say, 30 to 35 times a game, and each of those runs are about 80 to 100 yards. So I think the highest need for Elisa in this program is, from a conditioning standpoint, is her glycolytic system. She obviously, all soccer players need a high oxidative base and a good aerobic base for sure, but she's going to get that focus from playing on a women's team this summer. So you can see there some of the things that we'll do to increase the physiological system, the respective physiological systems. As we get down here into the strength, power, hypertrophy, and muscular endurance phase, she's just coming off of a phase on muscular endurance. And while hypertrophy is something we're looking at here for the next 4 weeks, it's certainly not going to be the most critical component of her overall macro plan. Injury analysis, there was a study conducted by FIFA, which is the national soccer governing body, that just basically summarized that nearly 2/3 of soccer injuries occur in the lower extremities, and therefore, obviously that's where the major focus needs to be. So knee ACL tears, ankle sprains, hamstring pulls were some of the key injuries that we wanted to look at. And then the one upper body or injury in that area would be concussions. There's a severe increase in concussions lately. So just put down some methods there to prehab and rehab each of those areas. And then as we get into the movement analysis phase, just looked at some of the key movements with regards to passing and striking, jumping, throw-ins, and then shuffling. As Elisa is a defender, she'll be in a lot of drop step / shuffling positions. And just some things that I noted at the bottom from an additional analysis perspective were just that I feel like a lot of soccer players lack core strength and flexibility. So in the off season and spring season in particular, we will obviously have some focus on core. And then in the spring season, we do yoga once a week. As we look at the annual plan, you can see that this is an undulating model. Obviously, the NCAA rules permit us to train at various different intervals over the course of the year. So from that perspective, that almost governs the fact that we can increase and have to increase and decrease our resistance training throughout the year. And obviously, once we're in our sports season, we want to reduce the amount of lifts and conditioning sessions we're doing as we increase the number of soccer-specific practices. Typical trends here, you can see us focus on muscular endurance after the spring and fall seasons, and then get into a strength phase to increase muscle mass, and finally looking at power as we sort of get towards each respective season. During the seasons, we'll reduce to initially 2 sessions a week, focusing on maintenance and power and injury prevention. And then as we get deep into our competitive season and hopefully postseason, we'll even reduce down to 1 session a week. I've highlighted the 12-week 12 weeks that we'll be looking at in my mesocycle coming up, and that's mid-May through mid-August, so basically the 12-week summer program. Apologies here, as you can see, it didn't wrap the text correctly when I converted this to a PDF, but you can see this is a power section. Hypertrophy here, just the H and the P's have got cut off. Here's 2 warm-ups that I put in, just noted here. One is good for prior to conditioning and speed work, and then warm-up B is more conducive for prior to resistance training exercises. We have a cool down here. There's some players that spend a significant amount of time on cool downs, but I just put in here static stretching, partner stretching, foam rolling, and great for cool downs. And at minimum, I want them to perform the following exercises after every single workout. As we get into the 12-week mesocycle, you can see that lots of the movements that I've designed are done in the sagittal and frontal planes, as they reflect the predominant movements that are completed in soccer. I've designed 3 full body days, as I think soccer uses predominantly lower body movements, and we want to hit those in each of our 3 days. But I do have a pretty good distribution between lower body, upper body, and then core exercises built into each workout. At the bottom, you can see I just put a little acronym guideline for those novices amongst us, just to make sure everybody's following along. The hypertrophy phase for us was important just to increase the muscle cross-sectional area, predominantly in the lower body, to help Elisa achieve her goal of being able to strike the ball further. As we get into the next 4-week section here, that will be a focus on the strength phase. As you can see, we've increased in load and decreased in volume. You can see the respective numbers for sets and reps, and then the rest periods for each of the phases are just noted here at the top of the workout. The final 4-week phase was to get into power. We concentrated on high volume and lower loads to increase velocity. I think one of the main aspects of Elisa's technique or striking technique that she needs to improve on is how quickly she completes the movement, or is able to get the shot or cross or clearance away. She has a tendency to be pretty lethargic through the movement, and we want to increase the velocity. So I think by designing a high velocity power workout, we're hoping that this will transfer into the speed at which she completes her striking movement on the field. As you can see, we've tapered here in week 4, as this is the final week heading into a really intense 2-3 days preseason week. As we shift gears over to the plyometric program, even though Elisa, I would say, is advanced from a resistance training standpoint, we do want to focus on the first month of this program. You can see in phase 1, just talking about developing proper form and technique, because I think developing a good fundamental movement pattern is really important before we get into the strength power phase and the performance phase in phase 2 and 3. Even though we had some plyometrics sprinkled into my resistance training program, I wanted Elisa to complete a separate plyometric program 3 days a week. I just mentioned about how we want to increase the velocity of her movements in striking, and obviously her vertical jump. And I think just keying in on plyometrics for even just 15 minutes 3 times a week can really help with that. At the moment, she's on the post on corners. She's only 5'5", so sometimes we're playing against 5'10", 6-foot opponents. So we have her on the post at the moment. But going into a junior and senior year and being an upperclassman, we definitely want to have her in the mix on corners and increasing her vertical jump so she can compete with players that are much taller than her is a primary focus of this program. Hence the reason that I've decided to keep a completely separate plyometric session in here. As we can see here, just from the actual program and how she's going to monitor her progress. I said this last week, but rather than putting down a number of contacts, I wanted to put in an amount of time, so she can see how she's progressing over the course of the summer. I think that's pretty self-explanatory there. Then as we move on, oh, not quite sure what happened there, guys, sorry. Just going back through this. Then I have a lot of descriptions for the speed and agility and conditioning section. As we get down here, I just tried to put something in there that's visual, just to tell them, how hard they need to be moving and running within the conditioning sections. So as we get down here into the actual program, you can see the majority of the focus here is just on a good distribution of aerobic sessions, whether that's the beep test, which is something that we'll use in preseason, or fartlek training. Obviously a lot of these have a mix of aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic in the fartlek 60% and at the beginning of the beep, and then as you get to the later phases of the beep, getting into your anaerobic systems. But I think, soccer, you obviously have to have a very good aerobic base, but your ability to, increase your lactate threshold and have a really strong glycolytic system, especially for Elisa in the position that she plays, is very critical. And then here at the end, we have some speed and agility sessions. You can see that this would be conditioning session number 1, conditioning session number 2, and then the speed and agility sessions. I've talked to her, along with the plyometric sessions, about making sure that she's doing those prior to her soccer sessions at the start. I think she has 3 to 4 soccer sessions a week, so I've asked her to do the plyometric speed and agility sessions prior to those soccer specific sessions with her summer team. With the conditioning program, I haven't specifically put in here days that I want her to complete these, because her summer schedule is fluctuating depending on whether they're traveling. And so she is the fittest player on our team, and I have complete confidence that she will fulfill her workout program, but I want to give her sort of the autonomy to decide which days she's going to do these conditioning sessions based around how hard and intense her soccer sessions are. So the last thing I want her to do is to come in with overtraining injuries. So just giving her that freedom to choose on which days she'll do these sessions, I think, is really important for this athlete. And then I did not taper week 4 for conditioning, because I want her to maintain her aerobic and anaerobic base coming into preseason, especially with the fact that her summer team will end in and around the end of July. So certainly drop the resistance training to give her some tapering there in week 4 prior to preseason, but decided to keep the conditioning in and just drop the number of sets that they're doing that week. And then finally, I have the injury prevention exercises. I want her to be completed 2 to 3 times a week. As I said, she's never really had a serious injury in her life, so great from that standpoint. But obviously we want to maintain that great record from an injury standpoint, and I think doing some of these prevention exercises 2 to 3 days a week will be important for that. And then finally, here you have my references. Thanks, guys.